Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into some arguments for divine existence and unity, all based on excerpts you sent us from the 22nd Word.
Aye.
And it's structured in a really interesting way. There's this parable, then it breaks down into 12 proofs,
Right.
and then 12 gleams that reflect those proofs.
It's like a multi-layered approach to these big questions. We get the story, the logic behind it,
Yeah.
and then these deeper philosophical and scientific insights.
Yeah.
It's really a journey of discovery.
Yeah, and it's going to take us on this tour of the natural world, seeing familiar things like seeds and seasons through a whole new lens. Okay, so the parable sets the stage with these two people
Right.
who find themselves in a perfectly ordered land. One instantly believes there must be a creator, but the other person's more skeptical.
It's that classic clash between faith and reason.
Right.
But the believer in this story isn't just relying on blind faith. They're going to present 12 logical arguments, these proofs, to try to convince the skeptic. And these proofs aren't abstract theological concepts.
Yeah.
They're based on observing the world around us.
Yeah, that's what intrigued me when I first saw the source materials. Like, we're detectives
Yeah.
looking for clues to this grand design.
Exactly.
So instead of starting with like a definition of God or whatever, we're starting with the evidence.
Right.
The signatures that point towards a creator. And what's fascinating is that a lot of these proofs deal with concepts we might just take for granted. Like proof 1, where the author points out how things without any obvious strength can accomplish incredible feats.
It really makes you think, right? The author uses the example of tiny seeds
Yeah.
sprouting into these massive trees or delicate vines lifting heavy fruits.
Right.
It makes you question, where's that power coming from? If a seed can contain the blueprint for a whole oak tree
Right.
and then turn sunlight and water into wood and leaves,
Yeah.
that level of complexity suggests something more than just random chance, doesn't it?
Okay, but couldn't a skeptic just say, well, that's just how nature works? Is that really proof of a creator?
It's a fair question,
Yeah.
but the parable's author argues that if there's no conscious creator
Right.
behind these natural processes, then you're essentially saying that nature itself is the miracle worker. You'd have to believe that every seed, every vine is like a miniature engineer,
Right.
designing and building itself without any guidance.
I see the problem with that logic. You're just pushing the question back another step.
Exactly.
It seems like it would take even more faith to believe that something as complex as a tree could just spontaneously arise from a tiny seed without some sort of intelligent force behind it.
Exactly. And that's what's so compelling about these proofs. They invite us to look at the world with fresh eyes
Yeah.
and consider alternative explanations.
Yeah.
It's not about forcing a belief,
Right.
but rather opening our minds to the possibility that there might be more to the story
You're right.
than meets the eye.
I like that. More to the story than meets the eye. So proof 1 uses these everyday miracles of nature seeds, plants,
Right.
to suggest there must be a source of power and intentionality behind them.
Yeah.
What other proofs really stand out from this list of 12?
Well, proof 3 really resonated with me. It compares animals and humans to mini palaces,
Okay.
each one perfectly designed and self-contained,
Okay.
mirroring the complexity of the larger world.
Right.
It suggests that just as a palace needs an architect, so too does this intricate web of life.
That analogy really helps me visualize it. It's like saying our bodies are microcosms of the universe, right? With systems for processing energy, taking in information, defending ourselves.
Exactly.
All these intricate processes that reflect the larger patterns of nature.
Right. And it makes you wonder, if our bodies are so intricately designed,
Yeah.
then who designed the world they inhabit? Could such a complex system truly arise
Right.
without an intelligent designer?
These proofs are really making me think about things in a different light. It's not just about accepting a belief.
Right.
It's about observing the world and asking deeper questions. What about proof 7? That one focuses on the changing seasons, right?
Yes. It's a powerful reminder that even something as familiar as the changing seasons
Yeah.
can reveal profound truths about the world.
Okay.
The author points out the precision of the timing, the way nature seamlessly renews itself
Yeah.
year after year.
Yeah.
This sheer abundance of resources provided for all creatures.
Right.
It's hard to imagine that all this could just be the result of random chance,
Right.
just a chaotic series of accidents.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. As the seasons change, I usually just focus on practical things like, the temperature, what clothes to wear.
Yeah.
Never really thought of it as a proof of anything beyond, well, the Earth's tilt and the sun's path.
Right. And those scientific explanations are important, of course.
Yeah.
But The author goes beyond just the mechanics of how it happens
Mm.
to focus on the why. Why would a purely random process result in such beauty and balance?
Yeah.
Why this dependable cycle of life and renewal
Right.
that sustains all life on Earth?
Yeah, if everything was just chaos, we wouldn't have the predictable patterns of nature
Right.
that allow us to plant crops,
Right.
predict weather,
Right.
and ultimately just to exist.
Exactly. And that brings us to proof 10,
Okay.
which deals with the cycle of life and death.
Right.
The author acknowledges that individual lives are fleeting, like, bubbles in a river,
Right.
but points out that their replacements have the same qualities, the same signatures.
Okay.
It suggests that the source of life must be something constant, something beyond the individual bubbles themselves.
So even though things are coming and going, there's a continuity,
Yes.
a pattern that suggests a source beyond just the physical realm we can see. That's a really interesting way of looking at the cycle of life and death.
It is.
I'm definitely starting to see how these proofs build on each other,
Yeah.
leading us to a deeper understanding of the world and our place in it.
It's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're just getting started. Up next, we have proof 11,
Okay.
which shifts our focus from the natural world to the realm of human history and experience.
Interesting. This is where we're going to dive into a proof that focuses on a historical figure, right?
Yes. Proof 11 centers around the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Okay.
But before you think we're getting into a purely religious discussion, remember, we're exploring the arguments presented
Right.
in the source material. This particular proof highlights the persuasive power of a message that resonated not just with people,
Right.
but seemingly with nature itself.
So it's not just about the person delivering the message, but the message itself
Yes.
and its impact on the world.
Exactly.
How does that connect to the idea of divine existence and unity?
Well, the author suggests that this prophet's teachings contain such profound wisdom and truth
Right.
that they seem to align with the very fabric of existence. It's like nature itself was affirming the message. This, in turn, suggests a deeper harmony, a unity
Yeah.
between the creator, the creation, and the message being delivered.
Okay, that's a really interesting perspective. It's like saying that a truly divine message would have a ripple effect, influencing not just individuals, but the world around them.
Exactly.
It reminds me of how certain ideas or works of art seem to transcend time and culture.
Yeah.
They tap into something universal, something that resonates on a deeper level.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final proof for this section. Proof 12.
Okay.
This one introduces the Quran as a decree,
Okay.
but it's not presented as just a blind leap of faith. The author links it back to those earlier proofs, suggesting that just as nature has its unique style and patterns,
Right.
so too does this text.
So the author's suggesting that both the natural world and this specific text point to a single author, a single source of wisdom and beauty. It's like looking for the same artist's signature
Exactly.
on two seemingly different works of art.
Precisely. It invites us to consider that the natural world itself might be a form of divine communication, a reflection of the Creator's attributes.
This has been an incredible journey through just the first layer of this text. I'm already seeing the world around me differently, noticing those signatures that I might have overlooked before.
It's amazing what you start to see.
Yeah. I'm eager to delve into those gleams you mentioned earlier.
They are truly fascinating, adding even more depth and nuance to these proofs. Get ready for a deep dive into some mind-blowing scientific and philosophical insights.
All right, bring it on. All right, we've unpacked those 12 proofs for divine existence and unity. Now it's time to explore those gleams you mentioned. I'm picturing like little bursts of insight, like lightning illuminating this hidden landscape.
That's a great way to think about them. Remember how the proofs were like finding the Creator's signature in the world?
Yeah.
The gleams take those signatures and examine them under a microscope, revealing even more intricate details and connections.
So it's like we're zooming in from the grand design of the universe to the fascinating details of how it all works.
Exactly. And we've selected a few gleams
Okay.
that we think will particularly resonate with you.
Always love a personalized approach. What's the first gleam we're going to explore?
Let's start with Gleam 2, which delves into the amazing processes of life. The author highlights two key transformations,
Okay.
making many things from one
Okay.
and making one thing from many.
Yeah.
It's like a cosmic dance of creation and unity.
Okay, I need an example to wrap my head around that.
Sure. Think about how a single tree, following one set of instructions in its DNA, can produce countless apples.
Right.
That's making many from one.
Okay.
Or consider how your body takes all these different elements from the food you eat
Right.
and transforms them into your unique physical form.
Okay.
That's making one from many.
So Gleam 2 is basically saying that these transformations, many from one, one from many, point to an underlying intelligence behind the scenes, orchestrating it all.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything and how these seemingly opposite processes actually complement each other.
Yeah.
If each apple required its own separate blueprint, its own factory,
Right.
the complexity would be unmanageable.
Right.
Instead, there's this elegant system of unity and diversity working in harmony.
This reminds me of something I was reading about ecosystems.
Oh, yeah.
How diverse species all depend on each other,
Right.
even those that seem to be in competition.
Exactly.
It's like there's this hidden web of connections that creates a balance, a harmony.
That's a great connection. And it echoes this idea of a single source, a unifying principle
Right.
behind this apparent diversity. Gleam 3 takes this concept even further,
Okay.
describing humans as miniature universes containing reflections of everything around us.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. I love the imagery of humans as microcosms of the cosmos.
Yeah.
But what's the deeper message here?
It's suggesting that we're not just physical beings, but also spiritual beings,
Right.
connected to something much larger than ourselves.
Okay.
And this connection isn't just metaphorical. It's reflected in the very structure of our being, in these intricate systems that mirror the complexity of the universe.
So it's like we have the entire universe encoded within us, both physically and spiritually.
In a sense, yes. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
and awe-inspiring concept
Yeah.
that bridges the scientific and the spiritual, inviting us to see ourselves as part of this grand cosmic tapestry.
Makes you wonder, if we are these miniature universes, what kind of responsibility do we have to
Right.
the larger universe we inhabit?
That's a profound question.
Yeah.
And it leads nicely into Gleam 4,
Okay.
which uses a powerful analogy to illustrate the concept of a single creator.
Okay.
It compares life to the sun,
Okay.
which leaves its signature everywhere it touches.
Okay. I'm intrigued. How does the sun relate to the idea of a creator?
Well, think about it. The sun's light and energy permeate our entire solar system.
Right.
The planets orbit around it, flowers turn towards its light.
Right.
Even our own bodies depend on its energy for warmth and life.
Right.
Just as the sun's influence is undeniable, so too is the Creator's presence reflected in the diversity of life on Earth.
So it's like saying that if something reflects the sun's light, it must have come from the sun. Similarly, if we see the same signature of design and purpose across all life forms, it points back to a single source, a creator.
Exactly. It's a beautiful analogy
Yeah.
that highlights the interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah.
Despite the incredible variety of life forms, there's a common thread, a unifying principle
Right.
that points back to the same source.
I'm really appreciating how these gleams are adding layers of meaning to the proofs we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
They're making these abstract concepts feel much more tangible and relevant to my own life. What other wonders await us in these gleams?
Since you mentioned earlier how much you enjoy the changing seasons,
Yeah.
I think you'll love Gleam 6. This one focuses on spring,
Okay.
not just as a time for picnics and blooming flowers, but as the powerful testament to the Creator's power.
Now that you mention it, spring does have a certain magical quality. But I've always just attributed that to the science behind it. Longer days, warmer temperatures, things like that.
Those are certainly factors,
Yeah.
but the author goes beyond the science
Right.
to highlight the sheer artistry and power on display.
Okay.
Think about it. Dead soil bursting back to life.
Right.
A symphony of colors and scents.
Right.
An abundance of food and resources magically appearing.
Yeah.
It's like witnessing a grand spectacle of creation unfolding before our eyes.
That's such a beautiful way to look at it. I usually just focus on how spring makes me want to go for long walks and plant things in my garden.
Yeah.
I never thought of it as a proof of anything beyond, the mechanics of nature.
And those mechanics are fascinating,
Right.
but they only tell part of the story.
Right.
This gleam invites us to go beyond
Mhm.
the how, to
Right.
the why. Why would a purely random process result in such beauty, order, and abundance?
Right.
It suggests that there's an intelligence and intentionality
Right.
behind this grand renewal of life.
It reminds me of how artists often talk about finding inspiration in nature.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because they're tapping into that same creative force,
Right.
that same sense of wonder and awe that the author is describing here.
That's a wonderful insight. And it leads us to another fascinating gleam, Gleam 9. which
Okay.
revisits that idea we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The efficiency and elegance of creation being made so much easier if it all stems from a single source.
I remember that from proof one, where we talked about the complexity of a seed
Excellent.
containing the blueprint for an entire tree.
Yes.
It would be incredibly inefficient if every single leaf, every apple,
Right.
required its own separate set of instructions.
Exactly. And Gleam 9 takes this concept even further, expanding it beyond individual organisms
Okay.
to the entire web of life.
Okay.
Imagine if every species, every ecosystem
Yeah.
had its own isolated set of rules and processes. The amount of information required to manage that would be astronomical.
It would be like having to write a new computer program for every single file you create.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Precisely. And yet, despite the incredible diversity of life on Earth,
Right.
there's this underlying unity,
Yeah.
this set of fundamental principles that seem to govern it all.
Yeah.
The author is suggesting that this points to a single source,
Right.
a unifying intelligence behind the scenes.
It's like the difference between a chaotic jumble of random notes
Right.
and a beautifully composed symphony.
Yes.
One is noise, the other is music.
That's a perfect analogy.
Mhm.
And just as a symphony has a composer, a conductor, an intention behind its creation,
Right.
so too does the universe suggest a grand design, a unifying purpose
Yeah.
behind its apparent complexity.
This has been an amazing journey so far.
It has.
Going from those initial proofs to these deeper, more philosophical gleams.
Right.
I'm seeing connections everywhere. What's next on our deep dive?
We've explored some incredible concepts today, but there's one final thought,
Yeah.
a question that I think will really resonate with you.
Ooh, I love a good cliffhanger. But before we get to that, maybe it's time for a little breather. We'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive into the 22nd word. Okay, deep divers, we're back and ready to wrap up our journey through the 22nd word. We've explored those proofs, those gleams. I feel like I'm seeing the world in a whole new light.
It's amazing how these ideas can shift our perspective, isn't it?
Totally. So you teased this final thought-provoking question before the break.
Right. Well, remember how we've been talking about finding those signatures of the creator, those unique stamps on everything?
Yeah, like a giant cosmic connect the dots.
Exactly. And if we accept that every element of creation bears these signatures, it leads us to a very personal question for each of us.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with it.
What signature are you leaving on the world? What unique mark are you expressing through your actions, your choices, your very being?
Whoa. Okay, that went from cosmic to personal real quick. I was thinking about these grand designs out there in the universe, and now it's like, wait, what about my impact?
Because ultimately, understanding divine existence and unity isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's about aligning ourselves with that source of wisdom and beauty, becoming participants in this grand symphony of creation.
So it's not just about recognizing those signatures out there, but about creating our own signature here in the world.
Precisely. And it's not about grand gestures or huge accomplishments. It's those small, everyday choices we make, how we interact with others, the impact we have on our environment, the values we embody.
It makes it feel both more manageable and more significant. It's not like waiting for some big moment to make a difference. It's about making conscious choices all the time.
And that's what's so powerful. If the universe is a reflection of the Creator's attributes, then our actions, our choices, become part of that reflection.
The stakes just got higher. It's not just about me understanding the world, but me taking responsibility for my role in shaping it.
Exactly. That's the exciting part. When we align ourselves with that divine spark within us, we tap into this source of creativity, purpose, and meaning that can transform not just our own lives, but the world around us.
Wow, this deep dive has really taken me on a journey. I started out curious about those proofs, and now I'm feeling this sense of responsibility to do something meaningful.
That's the beauty of exploring these ideas. They're not just concepts. They have the power to change how we see ourselves, our place in the universe.
Thank you so much for being my guide on this journey. This has been an incredibly thought-provoking conversation. I feel like I have a lot to ponder.
It was my pleasure. And remember, the journey never truly ends. Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep seeking those sparks of insight.
Beautifully said. And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this exploration of the 22nd word. Until next time, keep diving deep. And remember, the world is waiting for your unique signature.